today's course.
If it is a problem, it's really definitional. I didn't see personal problems, any specific reasons. Oh, you know what, MM? I put that as don't forget the self. Don't forget the self. Self problems, personal problems. That would be that. All right. Love that you guys are typing in. I'm going to try to keep up, and it does make it more interesting. As we're working through the avoidance of problems, the anticipation of problems, the identification, the analysis, and the resolution, I think it's helpful if you guys have a problem in mind. All right? So I want you to, hello, Angie. I want you to think about a current workplace problem that you might be able to influence. Something where something you can do might make a difference. And I want to know how well you believe the problem is currently being managed. So a problem might be technical, it might be social, it might be cultural. It might be where the prevent would have been something that was a lot larger problem because of it. So what are the warning signs in your warning indicators in your line of work? All right. Look at the system, and this allows you to anticipate potential problems. What's the system that's at work? What are the weak points in the system? Is there any part in the system where you think, oh, that's a problem? There might be a system at work where there's one particular manager or employee that everything gets stuck there. They always have a comment or something slows it down, or what is it about the system? Maybe it's more of a blockage in the system that when things are going through the cycle, they always get caught in this step. And then also look at the outcomes. And if the key leverage points are hypothetical blocks to achieving these outcomes. What are the outcomes? I want all 115 students who are going to New Zealand to evaluate it as the best face-to-face thing they've done. I was going to say in 2 years, but it's the only thing they've done in 2 years because of COVID. But what could block that? What's the key leverage point? What are the weak points? And can I circumvent, can I tighten that up before it even happens? Because I know from past experience that when we don't do this, this happens. So why don't we do this better? Try to get around it. All right? M's asking, what if your influence is low? You do not manage the teams formally and you miss organizational awareness. How can you feel more confident in that scenario to get them to solve the problem if you feel powerless? I mean, that's really a challenge. Let me mention the difference between management and leadership. Management is when you have authority thrust upon. Authority is part of your job, right? You are a manager. You have responsibility for things. Leadership is when other people choose to follow you. You have a language of leadership. You have a way of speaking. You have the respect of your peers. You have the respect of management. You have respect of people below you. And really developing that language of leadership where you're confident and strong and you feel good and you are someone that other people look up to, that's going to give you more informal power. All right, so that's what I would work at. When your influence is low, you can be annoying, you can be position. So I would, in general, problems will come and go. Your leadership capacity is something you can consistently work on so that you can have more authority and power to influence things throughout your career. So that's just something to think about. Yes, I agree, MM. It is that icebergy thing. All right, let's continue on with problem avoidance. Getting ahead of and circumventing problems. Here's some things to do. Put buffers in the system. Look for your high risk, high stress areas and put a buffer in. If you know, I work in more HR areas. If you know that on Thursday people are slow, they're feeling down, they're feeling flat. It might be as simple as bringing in some cookies. All right, having a bit of a laugh, doing something that just if you go on saying, man, everyone's really flat on Thursday, and you say that for 6 months without doing something, well, try something. Same thing with a technical system. If you know this is where it glitches, well, what buffer can you put in? If you know that people are, people think that people are unsatisfied about pay, but mostly it's about appreciation. And I've seen organizations put in amazing systems that show appreciation. They're simple, they don't cost anything. So when you're talking about attrition, who was it? Was it MM who said something about attrition? Yeah. Why? Why are people leaving the organization? Why aren't they happy? Have you asked them, do you have exit interviews? If it's the same theme, let's put a buffer in. It's amazing how simple things get ignored. When people tell me about the same problem, I say, what have you done about it? Nothing. Okay. All right, what else can you do? You can prioritize proactivity. Let's not just put fires out. Let's be proactive to stop the fires from happening. Let's deal with root causes rather than symptoms. One of the worst things I ever saw was we went out for, I think it was crepes one day. Someone from admin organized it, and we went out, and I saw someone didn't go. And I'm like, are you coming? I said, oh, no, I wasn't invited. Man, if that is an indicator of a root problem we need to get at, I don't know, because I just assumed everyone wasn't invited. And then I go and they're like, oh, did you say something to Sharon? She wasn't invited. I'm like, what the hell? And it's not what she did on the day. There is a much bigger thing at play. There is a root cause problem we need to get to. Again, we tend to ignore these things. Keep track of wins. That's a great thing to do. How long it's been since something's happened. Let's be positive. All right. So let's do a little activity. And I do think, I do think leadership, awesome. All right, problem avoidance. Using the following as prompts. Spend a couple of minutes thinking about potential problems you see coming your way. If you have anything interesting, type it in. But this is for you to work through. Just thinking to myself in my workplace right now. What technical problems do you see coming your way? Well, technical, not too many for me, because we're going to be doing a lot more stuff face-to-face. So that's awesome. So I won't have as many technical things online. Financial, yes, there is a financial problem in my workplace. What do I see coming my way? A lot less money for travel because with COVID, they all had budget savings. So I'm predicting that there will be problems. How do I manage that? Well, I'm going to have to negotiate budgets up front for my travel from the States to New Zealand and the States to Australia. I can't work on the assumption that it's going to be the same as it was before. So rather than waiting for the problem for them to say, Zena, there's no budget, I'm going to ask up front how, and I'm not going to say, are you going to pay me to come out? Or are you going to have me come out and say, how are we working the budget for this year to include my travel? I'm going to work on the assumption that's going to happen, but I don't want any surprises. So I'm thinking ahead. I'm sure there'll be technical problems, but I'm not sure what they're going to be. Financial, yes, I'm predicting that travel is going to be harder because they squeezed it out of the budget and put it in other things. Cultural, yeah, I've heard, again, there's rumblings about some cultural issues at work. Hopefully they won't impact me, so I haven't been too worried about it. Management-oriented, there are huge elements of toxicity in the management environment, but I'm very lucky that the person above me is amazing. If I hear rumblings that they're going, whoo, all right, that would not be good. Customer-oriented. For me, that's students. Right now, everyone's pretty happy. I have this potential problem in New Zealand, so we're working very hard at trying to make sure that doesn't occur. Staff-oriented. I have very disenfranchised staff at the moment. I have a couple of executive assistants that help me at the Australian New Zealand School of Government, and they're overworked and underpaid. They're not mine fully. They do tasks for me and other academics. And the turnover has been horrendous. So I keep saying to my staff that work for me, do you plan on being here for next year? And if there's any sense that they don't, I ask for, I can't give up the ghost. I can't say, so-and-so is planning on leaving, but I can say, what's the plan if we have staff turnover? Self-oriented. Man, that COVID thing, and I have been sitting on my butt in front of a computer instead of being face-to-face for a couple of years now, and I realize that I'm not as enthusiastic about the fit, especially when I have to travel from one side of the world to the other, back and forth. But I'm hoping that once I'm in front of a live audience again, that I will love it as much as I always have. So that's me just running through thinking, if I was in a managerial, I only work part-time now. I'm semi-retired. But if I was in any kind of position at work, that's something I would run through once a week. Once a week, I'd list those categories might be different for each one of you, technical, financial, cultural, but just tick them off. What do I see coming? Let's do this. Let me work through it. I want to make sure that I can, let's not let that happen. Happened last year. Let's not have it happen again. NF is saying that a technical problem, wait, where am I? By quantitative experience, you end up being a manager. And now being an introvert, how do I cultivate certain soft traits in me where I'm able to motivate the team? And P, let me get back to that. Technical problems. We are shutting down one of our major tools while we migrate to another. Unfortunately, the second tool is very finicky and currently unusable for my team. Well, you need to bring that up, NF. Bring that up the line. And let people be aware. I am concerned. I would never say, this is going to happen. But like, look, I'm really concerned that if this is to happen, this would be the implication. So I'd bring that up. Due to going 100% remote, I see and predict a cultural change affecting traditional manager style communicators and younger, more text astute. Look, I think that this going remote, hopefully it will back off from 100%, but for some organizations, certainly a hybrid model, some are going 100% remote. It will demand a different communication style, different leadership style, and it's hard to predict exactly what will work, but it's a time where we need to be flexible. Absolutely, flexibility is key. Management oriented. Support from them is hard to get. Lots of politics, avoiding a single out lack of ownership on the other. Yes. Management oriented is challenging. I would just suggest we have to think politically. Keep your focus on what you want to achieve. Again, more than being right. All right. Now let me go back to NP's question. How do I cultivate certain traits in me where I'm able to motivate my team? One of the things I do, NP, when I'm working with people doing personal coaching is help people develop what I call a language of leadership. And I mentioned that to M as well. A language of leadership is where we develop a style that suits our personality. And it doesn't have to be confident and strong and assertive. It can be, I want you to think about what your best communication characteristics are. What would your best friend, your partner, your parent, your child say is your best quality? Are you caring? Are you concerned? Are you witty? Are you warm? What is it about you that makes other people like you? Do that and really think about it and try to incorporate that into your language of leadership. Let that drive how you manage others. So it doesn't have to be, introverts are funny and they're warm often and they're so personable, but they have a particular comfort zone. How can you bring your comfort zone with you? So rather than try to be someone you're not, identify your best self characteristics, and that will help you motivate the team or solve any problem. All right. All right, let's see. Final one for NF, and then I'm going to move on. The engineers are proud of their work and too stubborn to change the tool. I'm trying to show them use case scenarios of how the tool has shortcomings. Hopefully this will prove the point. I hope so. I hope that evidence will. And I think one of the things to do, NF, is compliment the engineers while telling them that it's not working. You guys are fabulous at what you do. I think the technical aspects of this tool are amazing. I think that blah, 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 blah. And I'm worried about the challenge of getting the users to understand the needed complexity of this tool. Yeah, something like that. So it's all complementary. Here's a tip for you in working with people. You are great, but you are great, however. Anytime you have a but or a however after a compliment, it totally negates the compliment. So one of the things that I try to teach in leadership is saying, oh, you look really beautiful, but you need your hair cut. You said that to anyone, they're not going to hear the you're really beautiful part, right? You do that work exceptionally well, but you never get it in on time. You're ending with the insult. So I would use an and instead, right? You look really beautiful. And I noticed you got your hair cut. And just leave it at that, right? Let's go to a worst case scenario. You do amazing work, and we could even do more with it if you got it in on time. Yeah. So use an and instead of a but. So with these engineers, NF, maybe think about how you can compliment them about something, and instead of saying, however, but, give them an and see if that works. I'm looking about BT's things on remote. Look, some people really love remote working and it works really well. Right? But some people don't, and not everyone's going to be the same, BT. Some people are really missing that face-to-face communication because that's where they feel they have influence and power. So it's shifting the game, and it's not going to be the same for everyone. But some people absolutely love it. Some people are struggling. Oh, thanks, Annette. All right. I'm going to do a pulse check. That is problem identification. I know we're just whizzing through stuff. Let's just get you thinking. I love this problem avoidance because, geez, in my managerial capacity, before I left full-time work, it is so easy to get into problem solving, fixing problems, putting fires out. That's why I honestly did take the time to go through that checklist, right? Go through the checklist and say, all right, what's coming up in the financial sector? What's coming up in everything else? All right. While you guys do that pulse check, I'll move on. If on the pulse check, you give me a little thumbs down, I'm absolutely happy with that. But maybe pop something in the attendee chat that I can address for you. All right. Let us move on to problem identification. So we're trying to avoid the problem. Now a problem is sneaking up on us, right? Problem is sneaking up on us. How do we get our heads around it? Because if you want to address it, you have to understand it. So, just looking at where we are. We want early, rapid, and accurate detection. All right? We can't confront it unless we can identify it. Not as easy as you might think because impacts can happen way before we start to identify problems. We only know there's a problem because of the impacts. All right, looks like everyone's doing pretty well. So how do I identify problems? Well, first, we need to clearly identify the problem. What do I think the problem is? What are the root causes? Who, what, where? Isn't it interesting? Is it the software that's the problem, or is it the engineers that are the problem? What's the root cause? Is it pressure from management that's causing the engineers to have the problem that's affecting the software? Once we get the root causes, let's rank them in order of importance. And then we want to develop a problem statement that includes impacts. This is the problem. This is the implications of that problem. Here's what I think is causing the problem. So let's lay it out. All right. Identifying problems. Rather than just your perspective on the problem, it's really worth getting a range of stakeholder perspectives. You want that broad view, right? So you have the views of the people, for example, that are impacted by the problem itself. There's so many times that management thinks they have a handle on the problem, but they haven't asked the people who are impacted, whether that's staff or clients. So they should help you identifying what the problem is. It'll help you frame more accurately and help you identify underlying issues. So who are these stakeholders that we can talk to? They can be internal. So we got executive, management, project team members, the various departments and internal clients, or they can be external. Customers, government, contractors, subcontractors, suppliers, right? All of that can be part of this. So, identify the problem. The root causes, all of them, develop that problem statement, get the opinion of all the stakeholders. All right. I am saying that was pressure from management. It does affect the engineers. Yeah, absolutely. All right. And who are they getting their pressure from? All right. So let's think about this problem identification. I love paper and pen. Honestly, I think it's the best way to have things sit tight in your brain. If you're just listening, you just get overwhelmed. So if you do have pen and paper out, and I should have said this at the beginning, I think it'd be great. And if you do have that pen and paper, you can grab it, then maybe you can jot down some notes. I even like pen and paper more than typing on a computer. I think that movement of the hand does use a different, it's about brain elasticity, trying to really set it in. All right, how can you get adequate information about a problem? Who do you talk to? Is it observational? Is it something where you need to talk to peers? Do you want to talk to your staff? Do you want to talk to management? Do you need to go outside the organization? Who are the relevant stakeholders? Who is a wide array of people that you can begin to talk to? All right? So how do you get adequate information? Who are the relevant stakeholders? Do you have that sense of the root causes? What are the root causes? Is it incompetence in management? Is it ignorance? Is it finances? Is it just changing times? There is nothing that travel agents could have done to stay in business once Google came. Right? Sometimes Encyclopedia Britannica was never going to be able to compete with Wikipedia. My publisher asked me to write a book, and I did. It's called The Social Science Jargon Buster. It's one of my only titles. I only have a couple of titles that aren't research methods. I write for Sage out of London. And I wrote this book. I have to say it's the book I'm most proud of. I think it's what they care about, isn't it? How much is this costing us? What contributes to the problem? Who are all the players in this problem? Where and when is the problem most likely to occur? Now we're identifying problems. Now we're having an understanding of those problems so that we can really dig into analysis and resolution. All right, let's have a look at what you guys have said. MR says they are a big fan of paper and pencil. I use a steno pad and keep one to the right of my keyboard at all times. Let me just write this down. If you haven't heard of it, and I don't get a kickback for this, but to talk to new people in areas it's a problem to solve prior to solving the actual problem, any advice? And I think that Professional development skills, something we call soft skills, is the kicker for everybody. When I was teaching at the University of Sydney Business School, I was a professor there, and I was big into curriculum design. And we would get into these meetings about what needs to be in the curriculum. Someone wants more finance. Someone wants more management. Someone wants more business study skills. Someone wants more math. And I'm like, oh, God, I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about, but I do. If I could teach anything to our young students, would be, how do I become more likable? How do I become more influential? How do I be that kid that other people want to help? Really taking the time to not only work on your technical skills when you're in, tech areas, but to work on those people skills. Look at how you communicate, how you manage others. How do you present yourself in a way where other people tend to listen? How can you take the influence you may have with your friends and family and then apply that in the workplace? Right? How do you do that? It's worth really thinking about your communication as a priority. There's this wonderful song out of New Zealand called Take the Weather With You. And it is a song about, you take the weather with you. You got good weather, take it with you in your head. Comfort zones are really interesting, and I try to take mine with me. What does that mean? Well, I'm a pretty confident speaker. In the beginning, if there was a large auditorium full of hundreds of people, it might make me a bit nervous. But then, you know what? I could give this talk with my eyes closed if it was in front of 30 people. If I'm with a group of kids that I've been working with and I wanted to talk to them about this, easy. I'm going to take that comfort zone with me. And I'm going to do the work to think, you know what? I'm not even going to worry about this audience. I'm just going to do my thing as if all these people, all 300 people, I'm going to morph them into 30 people I'm comfortable with. I'm going to take that with me. Easier said than done. Some of you know I play keys and sing in a rock band, and singing is relatively new to me. I only started a couple of years ago. Oh my goodness, taking my comfort zone with me, not so easy. I'd never sang. All of a sudden, I was nervous in front of just what you're comfortable with. Take your comfort zone with you. That'll help. All right, what do we got? New messages. Crowded house. You are right, JS. That is the one. Okay, where are we? Yeah, JF, we'd all be rich if we came up with that idea. I'm going to New Zealand at the end of November, and I cannot wait. And for some reason, for a smart person, I can be really silly. I'm like, all right, the weather in Australia is 30 degrees, which is 90 Fahrenheit. I'll just bring a sweater at worst. Meanwhile, you need a freaking parka. But yeah, it is crowded house. All right. Thanks, Em. Let's move along before we have a little break. I want to talk about strategies for problem analysis, and then we'll have a quick break. You guys are awesome, by the way. Thanks for being so involved in the chat. I think it does make it a more interesting class. It certainly does for me, and I hope it does for you. All right, what does Einstein say? I'm a big Einstein fan because I always thought he was just a scientist, but what an amazing philosopher and sociologist. And he said, if I had an hour to solve on a problem and my life depended on it, I would spend the first 55 minutes determining the proper questions to ask. We're going to dig in. We are going to dig in hard, and we are going to understand this problem, every aspect of it, so that we can come up with solutions that work. So, I am big into understanding problems with data. I already told you I'm a researcher. If you were to Google me, I am the only Zena O'Leary on the internet. I have accountability. Transparency means there's a lack of agendas. You have full information, cooperation, collective decision making. I'm transparent, man. You know how I've solved this problem. because here's the data to back it up. I have all the data about this problem. Now we can start to answer it. Now we can start to address it. The other thing about data when you're analyzing a problem is it gives accountability. This is where an individual or an organization can account for its decisions. It accepts responsibility for those decisions, and it discloses results in a transparent manner. All right? So if you want to delve into and really analyze a problem, you want to get to the cause and impacts, fantastic if you can do it with data. So I want to give you a framework for analyzing problems. Just one, there's a lot of them, but let's look at one of them. I think it helps when you're identifying problems. One of the things that's critical is to understand how much risk is associated with the problem. Now, risk is a combination of impact and probability. Impact is, man, how devastating is it going to be with the impact? Probability is, how likely is it to happen? Came through Florida, right? What is the probability? My parents live on the Gulf side now, half the time, of Florida in a place called Cedar Key. What is the actual probability that the eye of the hurricane is going to hit Cedar Key? Yeah, it's probably relatively low that it's going to hit them exactly. Could be high, could be above. It's a wide array, right? Medium to low. But the impact, if it hits you directly, is devastatingly high. So one of the ways we analyze problems is to understand what is the impact. If you have high probability and high impact, man, you got something that's red light. You need to do something. If it's low probability and low impact, well, then it's not such an issue. Part of the problem with COVID is we aren't sure of impact to this day. So when you have like the common cold and people think, or let's say Ebola. The probability of someone from the United States getting Ebola is incredibly low, even though the impact is incredibly high. You don't want to mess with that. So overall, the risk is low. Okay? But if Ebola started to spread, then you have medium to high probability with high impact. Now it's something you have to manage. So let's go to COVID in the beginning. The probability of getting it was actually high. The impact was unknown how it affected an individual, but it was something that certainly could be high with a ventilator. We don't even know the long-term impacts. So now that's why there was such a panic. And the people who weren't worried were the ones who were saying, you know what's no worse than the common cold. So they were trying to bring the impact level down to low or medium. So even if the probability was high, the impact is still manageable. So what is your workplace challenge? The one that we talked about at the beginning of the hour. Is it something where the impact is high? People are going to be leaving the job. People are going to be stressed with ulcers. Our whole computer system is going to collapse. Well, those are high impact. If it's people are going to grumble, then maybe it's medium or low impact. And what is the probability? Man, we are shooting for a fall. This whole thing is going to collapse. Or, there's a slight risk, but it's probably not very high. Are you in the green, the yellow, or the red? If you're in the red, we got to get our act together. We got to move. If we are in the yellow, then I think we need to prioritize strategies. If we're in the low, something worth keeping your eye on. So that is one strategy for analyzing a problem. All right. Putting in a pulse check. Let me know how you're going.